This is a 1974 Mazda rotary engine pickup truck, and in today's video, I'm going to be converting this from unreliable, carbureted, old-school rotary engine to electronic fuel-injected, still rotary engine. We're also going to add disc brakes, and we're going to be making this truck into something that you can reliably drive and use as one of the rarest and coolest mini trucks on the road. So my name is Mr. Rad, and this is not my truck, actually. This is my really good friend Charles's truck. He actually bought this probably 20 years ago or so, but it was not his first rotary truck. This one came out of Dallas. He flew down there, drove it home. It's a really neat story that maybe I'll have him tell on the channel one day. And when I first met Charles, this truck was beautiful. It was all red, which it still is, but even now it's got some scarlet coming through. He wrecked it once, it got fixed, parts of it have been repainted. Somehow this bedside and that door have faded at different colors, even though I can promise you where he parked it was always in the same amount of sunlight. The front end, all the clear coat, some of it's been buffed off, some of it's been flaked off by the sun. And I can tell you, this truck has just, in the last 10 years of me knowing Charles, has taken a steep decline of not really neglect, because there's always been a ton of care for this truck, as the red rotary truck honestly brought a ton of the Tennessee rotary community together. But with all the projects, Charles loves to help out all of his friends, so much so that some of his own projects don't get done. So I picked the truck up from down in Tennessee a few weeks ago, and we're going to be revitalizing this thing so that Charles can use it and drive it. We're not going to be painting it. Rotary trucks are a pain to paint. We might get some of that rub-on clear coat stuff, but for now, EFI conversion and disc brakes. So let's take a look at what we've got. This is an Ace's EFI throttle body. So, much like a Holley Sniper EFI, this is going to convert the truck from carbureted rotary to a nice throttle body EFI injection setup. If you have ever seen a Sniper EFI unit, this is basically, I wouldn't say a carbon copy of that, but it's very close to what a Sniper EFI unit does, just for a little bit less money. So this kit has 4 injectors built into each side of this carburetor looking device. It is a 4150 flange, so this is going to bolt right onto a Racing Beat 4-port Holley manifold. This one does not have the ECU built in to the throttle body like a Sniper. So the Ace's unit actually comes with a small little box that's going to be this is our ECU, just like a Haltech or a Fuel Tech or any other sort of standalone ECU. This is the computer that's going to control it. We've got to mount this somewhere, in addition to this fancy EFI monitor screen. So the Ace's setup is CAN bus, so this is basically like a Haltech IC7 that we run in a lot of our other fancy rotary EFI cars. So we've got to find a place to put this inside this old rotary truck that isn't going to make it, not feel like a classic instrument of 70s mini truck perfection. In the package, we also get a super nice pre-terminated harness. Some of these leads, I've kind of laid this out on the truck, as you're going to see. Might be a little long, might be a little short for your application, but we're able to really get a good head start on building a harness with this. Charles likes his engine bays nice and tucked. So wire tucked, wires hidden. Let's make it look like the engine's just floating in there, has always been a goal of Charles. And when you look at, Sheba, the turbo truck, this one specifically, there's no wiring to be seen. So we really have to keep that in mind. If we're doing this for Charles, we got to do it how Charles would like it, which means it's got to be clean and tidy. This thing's like an RX-7. It's got door creak. After we get done doing the EFI installation, we're going to be converting the rear of this truck, which is ginormous, ugly drum brakes that you pretty much can't get parts for anymore, to a modern disc brake setup. So, fun fact, these trucks share the same bolt pattern as your 6-lug Chevy. So these are actually brake rotors for like a Cadillac Escalade or a Tahoe, and we're going to be running brake calipers on this deal. So these brake calipers have a real nice e-brake setup, cable style, so we'll be able to hook the factory handbrake up for the rotary truck, which is a huge win. Never want to just trust a rotary engine, especially when they're low compression, to just leave it in gear. They might roll away. It doesn't take much to turn these engines over. So this setup is going to work really well on the back of here. The rotors are an off-the-shelf part. If you followed along on the channel for a long time, you know that I hate running custom parts, because when you're stuck in the middle of Kansas and you need a brake rotor, you want to be able to buy one from the local parts store. You don't want to have to order one from some crazy custom supplier that then takes 3 weeks to get there, and then you've got to figure out what tornado to like not get sucked up in Kansas while your rotary truck is stuck on the side of the road. So sustainability is key, and that's what I really like about this kit. I don't really remember where Charles got the kit from, so drop in the comments below, or I'll have Charles comment below. If you're interested in these kits, he can link whoever he found it from, I think just on like a rotary truck forum. Trust me, rotary trucks, there's only about 15,000 of these trucks ever. I think about 13,000 of them probably got sucked into the ground via rust. So they're really rare, which means no one really makes stuff for these. So taking a look at the truck itself, we've got factory air conditioning in this rig, which is super nice. Charles has some real trick old school gauges in here, so we're actually going to be removing these to put that screen right where those go. We don't want to modify the unmodified center console. This truck also has a really rad RX-5 Cosmo steering wheel. So I've YouTuber cheated and gotten a little bit ahead of what you guys are going to see actually get taken off of this truck. This is the original Hitachi style carburetor that would have came on this truck. Fortunately, we've got a spring style hood prop on this deal, but I already went ahead and removed this carburetor. Charles has built, and he builds Nicky carburetors, which are RX-7 carburetors. This is similar to those, but a little bit bigger. He was just, you know, these old carburetors, you can't really get parts for them, and he was struggling to make this work. I think it was a float, needle, and seat issue, because when I got the truck, obviously it wasn't running, but this was already off, and this is kind of, it was sitting on there. It looked like a complete truck, but it was definitely one of those, like, ran when parked, but it broke whenever it was running, so we just left it there, and I'm going to tell you that it was running kind of deals. Take a good look in here. One last look at the engine bay before I clean it. We got all sorts of pine needles and leaves, because Charles, there's a lot of pine trees around his house. In addition, no wiring. So this is the factory fuse block location, but you can see all the wires are tucked, ran up through the fender. The coil wires and power comes up under the fender, and it's all hidden. You just see the plug wires, all of his gauges and stuff. The wires all run back through here and go into the firewall versus coming around and over. So it's a super, super clean setup. Fortunately, with this EFI, I think there's going to be a big harness I'm going to have to hide somewhere, but we'll manage around that. And you can see here, we're not going to be able to use this intake manifold. So let's go find an intake manifold to run on Charles's truck. So you might think we're coming out here to raid my stockpile of intake manifolds, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, there's a Holley manifold right there next to my frozen solid plasma table. But actually, I'm going to be sacrificing a part off of my own rotary truck. So this is my 1974 Mazda rotary engine pickup truck, which runs perfect right now. It's a great running vehicle, and we're going to take it apart because that's what we do around here. We love taking apart perfectly good running cars. So I have a Holley carburetor on this. I've never been a big fan of Holley carburetors so much on these, just because they're, I don't know, they're just a little funky. The Holley Sniper, great setup. Hopefully this Aces Tactical thing, great setup. Holley carburetor itself, they work really well, but they're just like, I'm a big side draft guy. So we're going to be taking this off so I can put a side draft on this eventually, which means it's going to sit here for a while. So you guys are going to have to nag me in the comments to dig my rotary truck back out in about 5 months whenever it hasn't moved. But for now, intake manifold off. It's going on Charles's truck. Look out, pupper. This thing is a beauty. So my truck's very stock, meaning all the wiring's in the stock location. So you can see just how clean Charles's truck is compared to mine. And you can see this lovely, leaky, crusty Holley carburetor down here. So this is an old Holley 465 Racing Beat kit. We're just going to pop this off. We just need the manifold out of this deal. And then eventually, like I said, we'll go straight up to a really rad side draft on this deal. Most likely one of the ones off the old rally car engines over here. A nice Mikuni. Ought to be just fine. It's like fuel dripping out of the accelerator pump here, making a mess of my truck. This is probably one of those trucks that I love this truck so much, it's so hard to change things on it, which means, like, because it's in such a good working condition, you just never mess with it, you know? You just always drive it, and then things go wrong, and the rule of threes, you know, it takes 3 things to go wrong before I generally start to work on something, especially when it's just like, it's the truck, you know? The wipers don't work, who cares? The headlights don't work, who cares? The brakes quit working? Okay, well, I'll fix the headlights and the wipers and the brakes all at one time. For the sake of Charles's truck, we need this manifold. I didn't really want to keep the Holly on here, so when he said, hey, I want to do this, and I need a Holly manifold, do you have an extra? I don't have an extra, but I do have one, and I will let him use it for basically indefinite amount of time until, you know, either I need it back or he decides to change his stuff up, or most likely I'll probably never need it back, so. Oh. I have no idea who put this together or who decided to use an Allen head bolt to hold the intake on. It's real confusing when they're not supposed to be that. Alright, here is our lovely, and now we have a lovely Holly intake manifold, racing beat, that's fantastically dirty, and is going to need to go on the other truck, which I'm sure, I guarantee you, I know for a fact, this intake manifold has been on that truck before, as this engine used to be in that truck, and that engine used to be in my truck, and Charles and I tend to play musical rotary engine parts all the time, because, well, we are unstoppable tinkerers, meaning we just change stuff all the time for no good reason, which the good reason now is fuel injection, but the good reason most of the time is like, got bored, let's change it. Need wrenches to turn. Life's too short to not change your vehicle engine every 3 months. It's like oil change. Let's just put an engine in it at the same time. We gotta drain the oil, might as well change the engine, right? That's how our brains work. So, I will come back out here, spray a bunch of 2-stroke oil in this engine, tape it shut. It'll be fine to sit for the winter, and my truck is now a future Mr. Rad problem. So let's go clean that, do EFI stuff. There we go. Get this old intake manifold out of here. These are so cute compared to the Holly manifolds. Nice Hitachi manifold. Fresh from Mr. Rad's hot rod heaven, we've got this Holly manifold, all sexified, beautified, cleaned up, i.e., I wiped it off with some brake clean and a rag to clean all the fuel gunk off of it. I noticed too, it's got a broken ear on it, so we'll just put a washer on that, but we're just going to run it. So let's get this thing slapped on here, ready to go. We're going to put the Allen keys back in it because, well, that's what was on it, and that's what I've got sitting right here, easily accessible. Though, they'll stay on here for a while, and then they'll just be really rusty for the next guy. Might be a problem, but it's alright. We'll change the engine before we've got to do something else. I'm sure Mr. Rad's going to thank me, though, because I'm not going to use the 14mm wrench socket bolt things, and I'm going to put the proper 12mm nuts on this, so that whenever I intuitively grab a 12mm, I get it right on the first try. And just like that, we're ready for some EFI action, so let's get our nice included base plate gasket on here and set this on there. Okay, we've got some complications. Right off the rip, fuel line, it should clear. We've got 2 feeds on this. I think I can switch them so I can feed from this side and this side. I don't know that there's necessarily a link that goes through here. I'll have to consult the directions, but that should clear regardless of which side you're on. This thing is giant in here. It's literally like as wide as the engine, so no big deal. The sniper units are a little bit smaller, but it is what it is. It's still going to look sick under our Racing Beat air cleaner. We should have plenty of height. And filter, bam bam. Looks mint in there. Check that out. So, plenty good, easy peasy, pretty stoked. Honestly, the Aces unit doesn't stick out past the Racing Beat Frisbee, so this is super fun. Looks nice. I'd like to interrupt your broadcast for one of the nastiest things I've ever found inside a vehicle, but I've found this before. Look at all these ants. It's like winter time. How are these things still surviving? Look at that. I literally lifted the floor mat and 14 million ants are under here. So this is now where I'm going to transition from assembly to rid this vehicle of creatures. And we're gonna take all of this stuff out of here. We're gonna vacuum everything. We're gonna, get the pine leaves, needles out. We're just gonna clean it. I was gonna try to get most of the fabrication done because you usually get dirty whenever you're fabbing and drilling and moving stuff around and then clean it, but we're cleaning it now. I'm not gonna have ants crawling all over me. This is weird. I'm out of here. Let's clean it. This is a very sad moment in time. A truck I've always loved. We've kept pretty clean. Charles always taken very good care of this truck. And I have discovered something that is, let's just say, cue up the old, animal shelter video. This is a sad day right here. We've got significant hull damage on the port side of this vehicle. Significant. Looks like this has been patched once or twice before. I can see some fiberglass down in here, which isn't exactly rust proofing for the long term. But this hole right here, this is quite substantial. This is one good bump away from this bench seat having a pretty good lean to it. Oh, this is not good. We'll save you in the future. For now, I might just lay some scrap aluminum over that, so at least you feel better about, maybe putting a tire iron there. You might not lose it and it fly out and hit a car behind you. Now I'm kind of afraid to sit in it. Let's keep a watchful eye. Does it flex? No. It still feels pretty sturdy. This is 6'4" Mr. Rad inside of a Rotary truck. I mean, we're not gonna fall out, but we could Flintstone our way. Because our Rotary is so slow, we're gonna need all the help. So I've done some reconfiguring of the old center console. You can see the old gauges are gone. We've got a nice hole here. Radio's still there. The USB port's still there. And I moved the oil pressure gauge to right here. Albeit the oil pressure is a pretty important gauge. For this truck, most likely not gonna have oil pressure issues. It's not a race car. It's not something we need to be data logging. At least we'll know the oil pressure. We'll be able to see the gauge move. You can look down at it if you need to, but for now, we at least have the option to have oil pressure. We can see it, right? The main reason for reconfiguring this area is so that I can put this little tablet in here. Now, this is where this is gonna reside. As you can see, it pretty much fills out that space perfectly. Now, this center console isn't something that would have came in this truck. Charles made this, so it's pretty simple, not the best fitting thing, but it works perfectly, honestly, for what we've got going on here. And if you didn't know what it was made out of, you wouldn't have ever guessed. So I'm gonna make a plate that's gonna cap this off, and you're gonna screw it in from the outside. Yes, it's gonna be visible. You'll see the little tabs as they bend over. And then this screen is going to Velcro onto that plate so that you can take the screen off if you wanted to. I could use double-sided tape, but then it'd be like semi-permanent. It'd be nice to be able to move this in case you're driving around and doing some tuning. You're not trying to tune from the center console. You can tune from, cell phone style right up in front of your face. So I've got the wiring just about finished up here. Wires running under the carpet to behind the seat. These old Rotary trucks, all your power for the chassis comes in right here. So I've simply tagged into the main battery feed for that to feed the Aces unit. This yellow wire here is an extension of the fuel pump wire, which runs across the back of the cab and out to where the factory fuel pump would be. The rest of the wiring, there is a keyed switched power, which I have to hook up yet on that side. And then also, because we're not using the ACES unit to control ignition timing, I just need to simply send it a tachometer signal. So I'm running a wire over to the negative side of the trailing coil, which is typically where we pick up a tach signal on a rotary engine. The extra harness that tach negative wire comes out of, I went ahead and just depinned the connector so that only the tach wire is coming out of it, and I don't have to have a ton of extra wires in here that I'm not using. Now it's time for the disc brake conversion. One of the things that I've found very interesting about these calipers, and I was told they're from some sort of a Cadillac Escalade or Chevy Tahoe or something, but is that the actual outer pad literally just falls out. It's only retained once the rotor is in there. So, the back of a rotary truck, drum brakes, they're ginormous, they're huge, 2 wheel cylinders, common for these to leak, common for you to not be able to find parts for them. So we're going to be removing all of this. Got to hammer the drum off. This is actually the part for the hubcap. It can stay on here. It's not going to be in our way at all. I've got to cut the backing plate off of this, and then we mount this bracket on the back of the axle here, and then the caliper goes on that, and then from there I can do all the plumbing, which is run this nice stainless braided brake line all the way across to the block over there. And then we've also got to figure out a way to hook up the parking brake cables, which it came with a little bracket. I've got the other side mostly figured out already, so we just got to go ahead and button up and finish all this. So let's get to taking this off. The other side, this came apart perfect, and on this side I'm turning my Phillips screwdriver into a corkscrew. We're almost to 90 degrees as far as how far the threads have turned. Okay, we're gonna need some sort of a... This sucks because the other side came apart so easy. I should have filmed that side. That kind of hurts your hand doing that. Ha! Who's the captain now? I'm the captain. So, what we just did there, because that screw was stuck in there, so Charles had whipped up this fancy air hammer attachment out of, basically we welded an old socket extension to an air hammer like end, and then using that you can now put a socket or a ratchet or something on the end of your air hammer. So I utilized the piece from my impact hammer on the end of this to that to then shock this loose without having to like weld or heat or do anything crazy. So, talk about adapters. Look at all these adapters here. I knew pieces were going to fall off that, otherwise I'd have like Wild Wested my air hammer. Alright, on both of these. To attach the puller, and then we're going to pull this drum off. I beat the other side silly, trying to get it off with a hammer, and ultimately ended up doing this, and it worked really well. So on this side, we're just going to start out with the solution that we know works really well. Well, that one came off super easy. I didn't even have to hammer it. Just needed a good way to hold it. So once we get down to the actual drum, this is where you've got to be a bit creative if you don't have drum brake specific tools. So I have this very drum brake specific tool, which I call flat blade screwdriver. In addition to this other drum brake specific tool, I call needle nose pliers. So we need to take the shoe retainers off, which is this piece here and this piece here, so the brake shoes are loose, and then we'll use the flat blade screwdriver to pull the springs out. So close. This is where it's very important to wear safety glasses, because parts, i.e. springs, are going to do what springs do, which is fly off and stuff's going to go everywhere. Brake shoe number 1. Brake shoe number 2, we can unhook this from the parking brake cable. one wheel cylinder removed. So you'll notice this has 2 ports on it. It's actually kind of interesting how this works. The top wheel cylinder on a rotary truck is where you bleed it. The lower wheel cylinder won't have that second port for a bleeder. It's actually quite interesting though. On this truck, Charles has a top wheel cylinder on the bottom currently, so the other side only had the right stuff. But I guess if you're gonna, ooh, little ball fell out, maybe a speed bleeder on here. Race car parts. Magical, it's now off. This is probably like the easiest brake conversion ever. So kudos to whomever designed it, and for Charles for finding it. I honestly have no idea, like I said earlier, who built this. So if you know who did it, comment below. May get one for my truck, but honestly, I'll probably just take the rotary truck axle out and put something else under it that's more, better, stronger, so that I can do wheelies. Brake disc. Nailed it. It's a little rusty. It's been sitting around for a while. So the caliper's tricky, like I was showing you. It's got these Allen head bolts that you've got to take out. They hold one of the pads in, but the other pad is only held in by the rotor. So like it's not going to fall out to the extent of like I'm worried about, you know, brake pads leaving the chat as you're driving down the highway. But it just makes it very inconvenient to put this together. There, you guys stay there. Let's get this on. Yeah, like that. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Ooh, it's falling out. Everything's moving. Everything's moving. Stay, stay. Nope, stay. Don't fall. This is definitely not race car serviceable. This is like you got the whole weekend to change brake pads serviceable. So we got the handbrake all hooked up, and I just got the last fittings so I could finish up the fuel system up here. Calvin's out here working on the car behind me. We've got all fuel lines ran. Come down here. There's a Y fitting under this. Comes around the front. Feed right there. Feed right there. Dialed. This side of the fuel injection unit's a little more busy, so I liked keeping the fuel lines over here instead of flipping them to the back and then making it just a mess of everything everywhere. So small little fuel seep at that fitting on the regulator, which I'm going to have to like take the fitting apart, which is not ideal, but I really want to see if this starts. So what we're going to do is go through the wizard here and see what it's going to require to fire this up. So this is a kill shot. So yeah, battery voltage, map pressure, temperature, injector, all of that. I wonder if there's like, we should have a settings in here. So if the 12A is 140 cubic inches, I think a 13B is like 200 and some change. So we're just going to start with that. Hope it didn't take. Injector flow rate, shouldn't have to change that. Idle speed, 850 sounds good. It's just a street port. So I think we should be good there. There's not a cylinder setting on here, so I don't think that matters for the Tach. Advanced cam stock RPM to kill shot ignition type. I believe I need to change this to coil minus. Save that because we're just sending it to the coil minus section. Force TPS 0 or no. Key off, clear alarm data no. Cam type stock, sure. It should just run. What do you think, Calvin? Think it just starts?
Yeah, I think it'll start.
It's a good old rotary. They start every time. Oh yeah, she's gonna start. It was probably mega flooded. there's my AFRs, so I'm gonna watch that. Chopping up the block right here. And it's getting mad. It's weird because the RPM in here doesn't match the RPM on my Tach, so there's gotta be a settings for the Tach. I need to set this up to be a 4-cylinder. I smoked out my garage twice. I have successfully, I think, tricked the kill shot into running good enough that this is going to drive itself out of the building. So let's drive this out of the building, and then I'll tell you what I did to make this run. Okay, I got no clutch pedal, but it should start. Let's see. All we've done is set it on the ground. We're running. I just don't have a clutch right now. Gotta rebleed the clutch. Move the piston a little bit. Let's see what more. This is called a pressure bleeder, i.e. bleed your brakes by yourself. If you have one of these, make sure you release the pressure before you take the cap off. It makes a giant mess. Ask me how I know. There we go. Pressure fully released. Let's see. No gas, fire up. Honestly, not bad. Okay, we got gears. So let's drive. This is what we call Armstrong power steering right here. Look at this. Come on, partner in crime with us. I'm going over to the farm so we can wash this truck. Nice, safe first drive. Okay, so first things first. In order to get this thing fired up, I had to do a good bit of confusing things with the kill shot. I guess it's not really confusing, it's just how they have it labeled is a little confusing. So there is effectively one page for idle, and it's all idle air control valve settings. So basically I was messing with the idle air control valve settings until I was able to get the idle air control valve to not go crazy because it was freaking out. Then I set the target idle right now to 550 RPM. Reason being, the kill shot sees this as a V8 engine, and the V8 is going to read 2 times as many fires per revolution or whatever as the rotary engine. So right here 540 is actually 1,000 RPM of the rotary. So you gotta set your target idle down to 550 or less. So that was the first big thing that I did. In addition, I widened the fuel burn percentages so that it was able to compensate more so it would start, and then I lowered the fuel burn minimum operating temperature for it to turn on to 130, just because it was taking forever to get this thing warmed up with me trying to keep it running, because it wasn't wanting to run. So my target AFR at idle is 13.5, my wide open throttle target AFR is 11.9, and my cruise is 12.5. So it's a little bit rich, but that's okay. Everything seems to be working. 50 PSI fuel pressure, my clutch pedal is working. One thing that this is definitely gonna need, just feeling this right now, is I can blip the throttle and it'll go dead lean. So it's gonna need some acceleration enrichment, meaning the accelerator pump shot. We're gonna have to turn that up, but let's see if it'll actually drive down the street. Clutch pedal still is going to need some bleeding. Seems to be driving okay. Cruise AFR, solid. Okay, my clutch is completely gone. There we go. All right, Letty, you sit down. I'm gonna punch it like a delinquent. Not bad. Still going a little lean up top. Oh, we got some backfires. Oh, don't you dare do it. Don't you dare do it. Came back. The power of an idle air control valve. But yet, an idle air control valve is such a pain to tune whenever you have just... I have no idea what buttons I'm pushing inside this thing. Not that I don't know what an idle air control valve does, just that it's mildly confusing. Look at that, though. So that's that. But if I roll in slow, it's like a big Weber carb. If I roll in slow, it's happy. Little daytime tuning session here. Little daytime tuning session here, and I broke the throttle cable again. So I have intakes in the back, the air filter's in the back, but I found this piece of wire on the side of the road, wired this up, tied off my throttle cable because I'm real far from the ranch. It's way over that way, and I gotta get back. So I think I can at least make it a little bit, like 10% throttle. This stupid thing keeps coming off. It keeps pulling the cable out of this with that set screw, so we're gonna have to refigure out a better throttle cable. We need a better throttle cable situation because this is inconvenient. All right, I got a little bit of throttle. That's a win. We'll make it back. We'll make it back. Nothing stops us. Figure it out. And it died. Oh, I love trying to make piston engine stuff work on rotaries. Who knows what's going on versus the guy who just bolts one of these on his truck. As you can tell, I'm a little bit frustrated, but that's okay. We'll make it back to the shop and the tuning is gonna have to commence. Like, we're gonna have to spend a lot more time tuning this. Let me pump my clutch up. This thing will do a one tire fire for sure. I don't know that I'll be able to set it on the brake, but we're gonna end this video up with truck runs. Okay, now it's pissed. It's cleared out. Hey, maybe you just had to blow the... Now see, my brakes don't work with the crap. Maybe we just had to blow all the soot out of this thing. But see, watch this. I'm gonna tip back in the throttle, and it's super mad. So I don't really know why. set the fuel learn minimum RPM lower because this reads half of what I'm actually at, and I needed to learn at like 700 RPM, which is not letting it change the base map. So then it's getting mad. Does that make sense? I don't know. Leave it in the comments below if you're an expert tuner and you think that's why. I gotta call into the kill shot people. Hopefully they can learn me something. Nope, and it's dead. Will it roll start? Yep. Okay. Okay, now we're in a tight spot in the middle of the road. It's mega flooded. Alright guys, so literally we got showered in a snowstorm this last week. I was waiting on some parts to finish working on this truck because, you know, the whole tuning thing, we were just fighting that. Up to this point in this video, I've been very frustrated. However, one of my lovely Patreon members showed me some things on the Aces tuning stuff, and we've been working through it. Also talked with the Aces EFI guys at PRI this year, which has since happened in this video because we're waiting on some parts and then snowstorms and other projects, and it's kind of a mess. So we've got this truck running pretty dang good, and let me show you what I did to do that. Under the hood, nothing has changed. It's the same Aces EFI 4-barrel throttle body that we were driving around. The startup was pretty poor. Everything was a little bit tricky, and we were just running a straight Tach signal from the rotary engine coils straight to the Aces EFI unit. And here's where that got a little bit tricky. As you know, I explained I had to rescale all of the tables because the rotary engine to Aces EFI Tach interface is reading at half of its actual value, meaning the rotary, the engine itself, was running at 1000 RPM, but the Aces EFI was interpreting that as 500 RPM, so it was half. So rescaling all the tables, that didn't work. Don't do that. We wasted a lot of time trying it. We learned. So I went back, and my buddy on Patreon helped me, and we got, this is called a tachometer signal converter. So it's this little box right here. You run 12 volts ground. You have an input wire and an output wire. So I've spliced this in to my Tach signal that runs to the Aces EFI box inside the truck. I can then set in this little box here that I want it to times the Tach signal by 2 effectively. So it's seeing the right number, it's seeing the rotary engine Tach signal and outputting what the Aces wants as a V8 signal. So when I talked with Tim from Aces EFI at PRI, he was like, well, we could simply just program in a setting for the kill shots, which are typically designed for V8s, such that they could run them on a 4 or a 6 cylinder. Literally all you need in the Aces is something to say, hey, the Tach signal needs to be multiplied by 2, interpret it as such, and then the Aces will work just as good. So hopefully Tim over there sees this. I got it working pretty well. VE stuff, I'm going to try to back this thing out in the snow right here, but tuning stuff, we were working through that. It should be working really well. I just needed it to start. So this is me starting this. My foot isn't on the gas pedal, and it'll just sit here and run. Now, it is 70 degrees in the shop. It's not freezing cold, so let's take it out in the cold and see if it actually runs. And y'all thought I was joking when I said it was legit a snowstorm. I'm probably gonna end up getting this truck stuck, but it needs to not be in the shop anyways because I got other things we need to work on. We need to get this thing finished up. Y'all been watching this video for so long. Well, I've been working on it even longer. Alright, this is probably the trickiest part of this whole deal. So with the Aces software, if you're running it through a PC, which I would suggest you do, This isn't really, at least like out of the box, as ready as I wish it would be for one of these, but you know, it's not really designed for a rotary, so we're having to make it work. I can't like actively change tunes, so it's kind of like flash-based tuning like we do on the RX-8s all the time, is you gotta like shut the car off, reflash the thing, start the car back up. So anytime you want to make like a major change, it's kind of a pain. Versus like, I think this is more so designed for like, you just strap it on and let the closed loop kind of do its thing. But I've been having issues with the closed loop kind of driving itself all sorts of weird. So the true test of rotary stuff and, you know, just cars in general, will it start the second time? Less than ideal. I refuse to give it gas for right now. This might not be good because now it's cold outside and rotaries don't like to run in the cold and it's actively snowing. Sorry to this truck. I feel bad for this truck now. All right, please start. Oh, now it's definitely flooded. See, now for some reason right there, it decided to just max out the injector pulse width and it went from 2 milliseconds of injector, that is how long the injector stays open. So like 2 milliseconds is real fast, to 20, which is like a whole lot of fuel. So I don't know why it does that, but it does that every now and again, which is not good because now it's flooded for like faux shizzle. Come on, reconnect to the ECU. Just stay connected, please. Now it's really not stoked. So we're stuck outside, not because of the snow, but because of just good old-fashioned figuring stuff out. So we go ahead and pull the spark plugs and do a little bit of a deflood procedure here. Fortunately, on these old school rotaries, it's super simple. Once we get the plugs loose, and then we are able to chill. Able to crank this thing over with the fuel shut off. Smells like a whole lot of fuel. And then we can get this thing deflooded. Son of a gun! Alright, well, snow-covered spark plug ought to still work, right? Looks good. They're brand new. So on these, you don't want this thing to start with 2 plugs out. Pull the distributor cap off. Think we should be good. I'll hold the TPS down. We'll crank this and see all of the gases come out of the spark plug holes. So y'all saw that steam craziness coming out of here? That's all the unburnt, super flooded fuel that was stuck in this thing. So I'm gonna go inside. We're gonna blow these off with some air because one of them was full of snow. The other's full of fuel, which the one actually had snow and fuel because I dropped it in the snow. And then we'll put these back in here and hopefully this thing fires right up. Number 1. Number 2. Okay, now. Should start. Comment below, does it fire right up? See, there it went up to 20 injector pulse width again. So it just like, when it tries to start, but doesn't start, it freaks out, whoosh, goes crazy. But I have the loop turned off, so it shouldn't be able to change. It should just default to cranking fuel and go to the 4 milliseconds that I have on the cranking fuel table. See, so right there when I let off the throttle? Look right here, watch the injector pulse width. I have no idea why this decides to change. Why is it going to 13, to 24, to 0, to 7, to 25, like... It's flooding itself for no reason. Now I have to hook up the four-wheeler, pull this back inside because it's snowing and it's going to be dark and there's no shot I get this started if it didn't start right now. Let's go. Alright, well it's at this point that I am mega frustrated because the truck doesn't run and it should run. So, this is going to be the end of this video. I am not fired up because the truck's not fired up, which means you're going to see a part 2, and in part 2 it's either going to run really good or we're going to put something else on it, like a regular old carburetor. So, either way, we got the brakes fixed, it's rescued, it's out of the snow, it's out of, you know, it's on track to being a rescued 1974 Mazda rotary engine pickup truck. I am not at all blaming the rotary engine. Y'all know I'm a rotary guy. This is not the rotary engine's fault. This is straight up, we're trying to do stuff that really shouldn't be or hasn't been done before. And when you're doing that, you're gonna struggle. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Live a life you don't need a vacation from. And I will see y'all in the next one. Keep it rad. So, we're gonna start. I don't have the dog with me today. She decided it was too cold, didn't want to come on. So, the next video is gonna involve some outdoor shenanigans in the snow. But I was really hoping I could get the truck finished, because that was really the next video. That's what I've been working on. So, we're gonna get the rally car out and hopefully not get it stuck. Peace, guys. Keep it rad.